Men, who proposed and she said no, what happened afterwards with your life? Story 1. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew she was the one I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all of our selfies together and ended it with a page made out of a photo I generated that said, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all these things into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album, and the other person gets a notification when you add new photos to it. And the other person that the album was shared with, my girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner, and it all came out. She saw the photo, she wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, but they were good reasons, and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up, we just weren't getting engaged at the time. A year later, we had finally discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping, she picked her own ring, and by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what her answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked so far, and the photo book is on the shelf to my left as we speak. I'm a firm believer that the only surprise in a proposal should be how you're proposing, not that you are. She, or he, should know that it is going to happen at some point, but not know how. Marriage is a big deal and should be discussed extensively beforehand, as it's a huge legal agreement. I'm glad it ended up working out for you. The photo book idea is really sweet. I prefer to propose on the first date, really helps break the ice. Ted Mosby, is that you? Story 2. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment, we were both stressed with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated to us the letter, badly, telling us that even presenting the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for some more help, we ended in the city hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice. If we get married, could we stop the deportation? I asked the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, "Well, thank you, but let's wait a bit." It was intense, and in retrospective, really funny. Addendum, we are not married and never planned, but we live together. She got a job that provides her with a visa. Soon she will present herself to a citizenship exam. So, did you marry her? We need answers. Yes, he didn't. Story 3. My husband asked 3 times in the span of a couple months. We had dated for 3 years. He was ready, and I wanted to graduate college first. Also, don't propose by handing your significant other a ring while you're both in the car on the way to Burger King. I'm low maintenance, but put some thought into it. He had been keeping the ring hidden in his mom and dad's house. We were on our way out to dinner at a nice restaurant, and we stopped at their house on the way there. I thought we were just there to say hi. We sat down for a few minutes, and he excused himself to go to the bathroom. His mom followed him out of the room and returned a few moments later with him at her heels, tossed the ring box into my lap, and said, "I guess this is yours." I was shocked. We had just found out I was pregnant, and he had been planning to propose at Christmas, but decided to do it early. His mother didn't like me, and she's definitely at least one of the things we divorced over. Put some thought into it. My soon-to-be ex-husband never really asked. He was like, "Well, that can be arranged," and that was it. We got married a few weeks later. Hindsight 2020. My dad did something similar. My mom was planning some wedding stuff while they were sitting at a Pizza Hut, and stopped and said, "Wait, you never asked to marry me." So he just sighed out "Will you marry me?" and they divorced when I was 16. Story 4. Said no, we broke up, got back together, got a job in Alaska for the summer, and forgot to tell me. Then we didn't talk for years. There was a shooting at my church. She calls me out of the blue to make sure I'm okay. After an awkward pause, "Well, I want to make sure you didn't do something stupid like go after the shooter." Then she hung up. But here's a good story. I was 20 and she was 18. We had been really close friends for years. We were in that awkward, should we date or shouldn't we phase. So we went out to dinner. She told me, "You realize if we go this route, we are getting married in a couple years." So we talked about what we really wanted out of life. She wanted to be a pastor's wife. I believe God loves stupid people because he made so many. We realized we both wanted different things from life. Been friends for 20 years. Had a rough patch when she got married, and the guy couldn't comprehend why I would be that close to her and not want to marry her. But now everything is good. You get my upvote for I believe God loves stupid people because he made so many. Case in point, look at all the sheep references in the Bible. Is it just me, or does anyone find the timelines in this story confusing as heck? Story 5. I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea. So I decided to propose about a week after, in front of all our friends. She was so shocked, she picked me up off my knees and showed me a way. Most of our friends were confused because everyone knew it was going to happen, and she said she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later she explained she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. My dad maintains to this day that my mom never said yes, till she said I do. She laughs when she's nervous and never actually says yes, but puts the ring on while laughing. He took it as a yes. They'll be married 39 years come August. Together 44. My mom never said yes at the altar, instead said bueno, well in Spanish. To this day my dad says they're not really married. In November they'll be married for 41 years, dated for 12. What an awful time to find out she has a bad stage fright. I'm super happy it worked out for you though. Story 6. My mother turned my father down, but didn't outright break up with him. She just wasn't sure about the marriage idea. She valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. No hard feelings, though. She called up the next day when she'd had more time to think about it, and she said yes after all. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. Just the fact that they could say those things to each other and still be respectful and friendly, loving, that's the key there. My parents are almost sickeningly respectful and loving. When she gave birth, one of the nurses remarked she'd never seen a laboring mother ask her husband how he was feeling until then. You're the first patient I've had who didn't cuss him out. Your mother, hey, how are you feeling? Do you need some ice chips or something? I totally understand if you're feeling stressed out. I mean, this is some crazy stuff. Just let me know. Your father, there is a human head shoving itself out of your body right now. But yeah, I'm fine. Should we get pizza after this? Story 7. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had poopy homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20, he proposed to her. She said she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that, he'd proposed to her every year partially in hopes she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s, he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he gets second thoughts about marrying the only woman he ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US, from Europe, to do her PhD at MIT. They drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started fricking whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after. Ooh, that turned dark quick. I think there's a 100% chance either that story is really about OP or he's a friend of the girl. Just saying. I'm friends with both. Probably more with him. It's just really sad how he chose to cope with it all. Story 8. She was in trauma from a past relationship, and at the time I wanted to help her move on, and in that act I realized that I've fallen in love with her, as she's the one who, despite being in depression, helped me out of my social anxiety. I just couldn't see her suffer. So I proposed to her and got rejected, as she wasn't ready to be in another relationship, and since I confessed about love, she got more anxious and our friendship was temporarily over. We didn't talk or have contact for months. Later on, I somehow contacted her, we had a bit of a talk, and asked how she was doing, and learned that she's been shutting herself in her room, minimizing contact with people. I still had romantic feelings for her, but I wanted to be with her and help her move on, so I insisted on being friends again. We spent our time like that, and honestly, she's the only friend I had. Time passed, and when I saw she's getting back to her normal life, I proposed to her again, and she accepted. It was a long way to that day. I've never been happier in my life. It's been 4 years since, though we have arguments due to different views, but we always come up with a solution to resolve things. And I can say this with certainty that nobody can love me the way she does. I feel lucky to have her in my life. Story 9. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again. She said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later, he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dad: marry me? Mom: okay. Dad: what? Alright, I'm out. Wild ride, but I'm glad it worked out for them. I'd never join a club that would be willing to have someone like me as a member. Dad: marry me. Mom: no. Dad: marry me. Mom: no. Dad: marry me. Mom: yes. Dad: well, now I'm not doing it. Story 10. I was the person who said no. We had only known each other for 3 months, and he was smitten. I was more cautious. I said, no, I like you, but it's way too soon. He asked when would be enough time. I said maybe a year. He proposed again at midnight, 1 year after we first met. I said yes, and we've been together 8 years now. I know a year was still not a long time, but we had a long engagement and didn't get married for another 2.5 years. I was expecting this to go down in flames, but ended up making me smile. Thanks a lot. Adorable story. A year is still way too soon in my eyes. I'm glad it worked out for you, but I've been in 2 4+ year relationships which have ended horribly. A year in, I was totally smitten. It was only after the honeymoon phase wore off I realized what a giant butthole they were. Story 11. So this actor, Patrick Moot, proposes to his girlfriend at a basketball game and gets turned down, while on the giant jumbotron. Clip goes on YouTube, etc., etc. She tells him later that she turned him down because she thinks his dong is too small. So he travels around the world, documenting what other cultures think about PP size and PP enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I've never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh. I've seen that movie and it really was fascinating. He has a booming TikTok account these days. God, I thought that would be a joke. Well, did you? Story 12. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no, and over time we grew apart. Haven't talked to her in 15 years. Don't know if she passed away. I know a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance, so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years, and he even adopted her son. But they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They're all very close friends with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He's in another state with the woman of his dreams. That's actually beautiful, in a dystopian capitalist nightmare kind of way. Story 13. About 2 years later, I met my wife of 22 years. We are happily married. The one who said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife is way into me in ways that the former girlfriend never was, and I see my life as far happier with my wife than I ever was with the one who said no. She's not a bad person. I was just young and in love with someone who wasn't in love with me. It worked out for the best. I'm glad she said no. I love this comment. Oh, frick, I thought I was answering what's your favorite Chinese food question, because I had both the app and the Chrome browser open with the internet. I'm gonna leave it though so everyone knows how freaking amazing Chung Fan is. You're browsing the internet in 2 different formats at the same time? That's some next level stoop. Story 14. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, I don't know. A couple months later I asked her again. She said maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape, but then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. Sounds like you dodged a gang shootout, mate. Those weren't your friends. Sounds like she didn't dodge a gang shootout though. I'm glad you said that. My friend made me feel guilty for not wanting to be friends anymore after he was messing around with my ex. He still tries to reach out years later, but I say screw that guy, then second-guess myself for 2 weeks. I wish he would just go away so I wouldn't have to feel anything about it anymore. Story 15. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker, and they've been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life. But it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. My dad talks to her sometimes. She got married to someone else, and they had a son who passed away from a medical condition. Well, that story went well until the last 6 words, and now we're all counting the last 6 words. Story 16. I was in a relationship with her for 5 years, living together for 1. She had an infant daughter from a previous relationship with a drug addict who popped up occasionally. We moved together because her mother stole her rent money for months. I was feeling depressed and lost my job. I was diagnosed with clinical depression later when I sought help. I told her I wanted to move back to my parents' house as I was going mad. She said if I did, it would be all over between us. I moved, and a week later, I tried to reach her, and she had started a relationship with a biker she met while we were together. I went to her house and proposed, but got rejected. She had a hickey. It's been 5 years. She now has 2 more children. I started treatment for my depression, 3 more months to complete, moved to another city, and had a substantial boost in my salary. I'm feeling better than in the last 15 years. Story 17. Not me, but a guy I knew proposed to his then-girlfriend in a restaurant, made sure to have a friend record it. She walked out when he popped the question and pretty much ghosted him. He started drinking, found a new passion in gambling, and gambled all his savings away. He ended up living on money from the state, works a garbage picker job now, and almost set his house on fire at least 4 times, that I know of, by making food and falling asleep drunk. He was an interesting guy. Friendly to some, but the state he's in is just sad. Hope at some point he picks up his life again. Haven't heard of him in years though, so no idea where he is now. Feel free to message your ex's father. He's a friend who happens to be related to your ex. Tell your girl, she'll understand. Don't let friendships fall apart. Story 18. Depression and seppuku attempt 10 times. We both really liked each other until I heard a lot of text messages from a stranger saying, "When do you want to meet up?" Next day, I proposed, and she said, "No, I've already got someone else." She walked away, and I've never been the same person. Just because someone burned you doesn't mean you deserve to be on fire. Sometimes it just means you got touched by a wrong person. I feel you, man. Take care. Story 19. My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her, even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent, and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents had decided early in their relationship that they can barely stand each other. I think you meant infertile. Impotence is an inability to perform normally, referring to not being able to get or maintain an erection. A buddy of mine told me once he will never have kids because he's going to get a hysterectomy. That was 20 years ago and still just as funny now. Story 20. I was proposed to several times by men when I was living in the Middle East. I think they just went around and found the next American girl to propose to. May I ask, where were you in the Middle East? I'm a Middle Eastern. I was in Jordan. The Jordanian men were persistent when I was there. Some of them were obviously only trying to be flirty, but didn't know that we flirt differently in America. Others were creeps. Story 21. I asked a woman after almost 6 years together. She said no, and added that maybe it was time for us to go our separate ways. Wow, shock. But life has to go on. About a year later, I met a different girl, and we were engaged within a year. We were both ready for marriage. That was 16 years ago. We've got 3 terrific kids, 2 boys that are exceptional athletes, and a girl who's a brainy little nerd. The lady who refused me eventually got married, had a couple kids, and got divorced. But she got married again, and had another kid, and got divorced again. We completely lost touch several years ago. Story 22. My mom and dad were not married and wanted a kid and had me. My dad, being Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to be married to my mom and proposed. She said no because she hadn't been divorced from her first husband for very long and now had 3 young kids and preferred to stay not married. He threatened to leave her and got on his motorcycle and started to drive away, until my mom chased him down and gave him in, leading to what my parents called the voodoo wedding the same day. Story 23. I asked her right out of high school, but she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together, got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. Ah, what a wholesome story, you/literal feces. Actual poo. Real doo-doo. Story 24. We actually got married, moved in together. 2 weeks later, she moved out, blocked me everywhere, and never gave me a reason. Shortly after, I was served with papers. Now I'm divorced. That was last summer, and not sure where I am now, making work my main priority for now. I just want to know why for some closure, but that's too far gone now. Story 25. All I know was that I was in kindergarten. My kindergarten crush said yes, and then a teacher made fun of us, and then I don't think we talked again. Ouch. Screw that teacher. Story 26. I proposed to my husband several times before he did. I know this question was specifically targeting hetero males, but this applies. He stated he wanted to marry me, but not right away. We were together almost 5 years before he said yes. I wasn't going to give up on this man. Story 27. As a woman who was engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you're sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole in your life plans. Story 28. He didn't ask again, and I had to ask him instead. We married last year. Story 29. She said, "Who the frick are you? Get out of my house." Well, it's not a no. Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now, or a Karen will sue you.